Good morning, everyone, and I'm here with the most consequential updates regarding the CLAT exam. Now, as you all know, there has been a lot of speculation recently about a change in the pattern of the CLAT paper. So, the moot question for the day is CLAT 2027, which will happen in December 2026, is it going to see a change in pattern? Well, I won't keep you in a lot of suspense. The short answer is no. So you can see the press release behind me issued by the consortium. The consortium of the national law universities did a meeting a couple of days back, and they decided that for CLAT 2027, the syllabus, the patterns, and the section of the CLAT exam are not going to undergo a change. So those of you who are giving the exam this year in December, that is CLAT 2027, can breathe a sigh of relief. Your preparation over the last 6 months or an year, or for some of you 2 years, will not go in vain. All of the sections of the exam, all the 5 sections, are going to be found in the CLAT 2027 paper. Now, having said that, there was an expert committee. It has made a lot of observations and criticisms of the CLAT paper over the last few years. And based on that, it has recommended changes CLAT 2028 and onwards. Okay, so let's have a look at the press release again. So for CLAT 2027, the syllabus is not changing. This is the exam that will happen in 2026 December. Now, when we talk about CLAT 2028, there is an expert committee which has submitted its report. The report of the committee has been published late last night, and they have put out a time slot till the 31st of August 2026 to submit your comments and recommendations on the proposed changes in the future pattern. Okay, so as of now, it still hasn't been announced that the pattern will change for next year. The consortium says that there is a committee which is being established by the Chief Justice of India, and the consortium will coordinate with it to analyze the report of the expert committee and submit recommendations for possible changes in next year's CLAT pattern. Okay, now we have to really go through the recommendations made, the criticisms of the past years, to understand what kinds of changes can come about. Further, there is one more important point for CLAT 2027 aspirants. If you see here in point 1, it says that the convener of CLAT 2027 and all the paper setters for this year's exam will consider and adopt the suggestions of the expert committee regarding the format and style of questions. So this video is important for 27 and 28 students, right? CLAT 27 and CLAT 28, which will happen in 26 and 27 December respectively. Okay, because those of you who are giving the exam this year, there will be some aspects of this report that might impact the style, quality, and format of the questions that you get. The pattern will not change, but the style, format, difficulty, accuracy of the questions could become better, could become a little bit different. For 2028, CLAT 2028 aspirants who will give the exam in December 2027, for you, the rest of this video is even more important because it is likely that these changes will reflect next year. Okay, so with that in mind, my agenda for today is to actually go through the report of the expert committee. I just want to start with telling you that the chairperson of this particular advisory board is headed by Justice Indu Malhotra, who is a retired judge of the Supreme Court of India. So the advisory board is there. Below it, an expert committee was formed with brilliant academicians, Professor Dev Gangji, Professor Tarunab Khetan, Professor Shyam Krishna Balganesh, Professor Pitam Barua, and Professor Surbhi Ranganathan. So these 5 eminent academicians and experts who have experience in the Indian and overseas academic systems. They have come together to submit this expert committee report. Okay, now first what I'm going to do is to quickly take you through the points that they have made about the existing exam. Okay, so what they have done is, first they have analyzed the CLAT question papers of the last few years and given specific comments about each of its subjects and sections. Okay, so that is very important to go through. Why? Because this commentary is going to impact the level, standard and difficulty of the CLAT 2027 paper, which is going to happen this year in December. Okay, so we'll go section by section. Okay, so the first point is about the English language. Okay, now here the committee says this is an important section, that the English language section is there to test your literacy skills, it's there to test your comprehension as well as your thinking process. Okay, so what has the consortium said about the past CLAT papers? It has said that there are a lot of times flaws in the construction and purpose of the English sections. Okay, so what the consortium has said is that in the English section, or rather I should say what the expert committee has said, is that in the English section, some types of questions should be avoided. What are these kinds of questions? These are questions whose answers are directly found in the passage, right? So once again, the criticism made by the expert committee is that direct comprehension questions should not be asked. The types of questions that should be asked should actually ask candidates to engage with the meaning, to detect the tone, to make inferences, to support or weaken the argument. Okay, so we are likely to see an English section more attuned to critical reasoning, right? Actual understanding and comprehension of the section, right? Second, let's go to the general knowledge aspect. Okay, I highly advise you to actually go through the report. I know it's 77 pages, but the part where they analyze the past CLAT papers is actually very instructive, and it will help us understand what the future expectations of the consortium are. The second section we are looking at is the GK and current affairs questions. Now, what the consortium, what the expert committee has criticized is that sometimes they really ask trivial factual details. Okay, trivial factual details. Sometimes there are questions which are simply based on answers found in the passage, right? And so this is a practice that the expert committee has deprecated. It has said that the actual purpose of the GK section is to evaluate awareness of significant national and international importance, right? And so once again, the point which the expert committee makes is that random trivia should not be asked. The focus will be on important current and international and national developments. Okay. Secondly, the other thing which the consortium, which the expert committee says, is that the passages which come in GK sometimes are highly biased and one-sided, and so the passages which should come should be of a high journalistic quality, and questions should be framed basically based on that. Okay, once again, the last and important point which will have an impact on what is asked in this year's exam. There is a criticism made by the consortium that the section is not testing the broad understanding of culture and society, specifically art, literature, and social movements. Okay, so these are some aspects that we can expect more emphasis on, even in this year's CLAT paper, because the consortium says that even this year's paper setters have to take on board the suggestions made by this particular committee. Third, let's now come to the legal reasoning section, right? Now, here what the consortium says is that the focus is on analytical engagement with the legal principles and their application to specific fact situations. Okay, what the consortium, what the expert committee suggests is that, you know, miscellaneous journalistic pieces about the law should not be there. Rather, focus should be on texts which deal with actual legal language. Okay, I hope that is clear. So, in the legal reasoning section this year, you can expect fewer passages from newspapers or random commentaries. You are likely to encounter passages which directly give you quotations or excerpts from actual laws or the constitution. The consortium also says that the answers should not be based directly on the passage in the legal section. Rather, the purpose is for you to understand the principles and apply them to the facts at hand. Okay, so this is how we have to understand this particular question. The last thing, and I know many of you care deeply about this, the expert committee also criticizes the fact that there are aspects of legal knowledge which are involved with this particular section. Rather, the expert committee suggests that your solving of the legal reasoning section should entirely be based on the rule, the principle, the passage that you are given. Okay, so this is significant. If you notice, last year there were a lot of direct legal knowledge questions, right? More than 10 out of 30 questions in the legal section were legal knowledge questions. So this is something that would be less expected this year, since the expert committee has seriously deprecated this process. Okay, I hope this is absolutely clear. So focus is on the principle or the rule that you are given. Legal knowledge is not to be tested, and most importantly, you might be given passages directly from the law or directly from the constitution, right? So the training we are doing in class, where we directly refer to the constitution, where we directly refer to some laws, that will come in handy for all of you. Okay, let's now come to the logical reasoning section. Okay, now the committee says that this section is supposed to test critical thinking, argument analysis, and inferential reasoning. Okay, and what the consortium, what the expert committee says is wrong is to give ambiguous questions, right, where multiple possible defensible answers exist. Okay, so the biggest criticism which the expert committee makes of the logical reasoning section is that it has a lot of ambiguous answers. Okay, it has a lot of ambiguous options where multiple answers are actually defensible. Okay, so here the primary suggestion which is made by the expert committee is that we need to be more precise in the question setting, more precise about the correct answers. Further, we can continue to expect questions from analytical reasoning, right, which test actually your thought process and your problem solving skills, right? So questions related to arrangements, etc., can continue to be a feature of this particular exam. Okay, the last section which we have in front of us is the quantitative techniques section. Now this is a place which you all may either like it or not, but what the expert committee says is that the quant section under the new pattern has just been focusing on ratios, percentages, fractions, averages. Okay, and the expert committee suggests that the focus should not be so narrow, and you should have to actually evaluate numerical data. This could be in the form of tables or graphs, and that questions should go further than simply asking you ratios, percentages, averages, and things like that. In fact, the expert committee specifically says that the section lacks variety, that you are simply being asked to perform a basic, throwaway numerical task, and that you are not being judged on other aspects of quantitative techniques, right? So this is an important takeaway for this year's CLAT aspirants. You can expect questions in the exam which are not simply focused on ratio, percentages, averages, etc. You might see questions from other topics like mensuration, data interpretation, data sufficiency, or even topics like speed, time, and distance. So this is an important takeaway for this year's CLAT 2027 students. Okay. Now, this analysis of the current sections of the exam is specially vital for the students giving the exam this year in December. As I've said, the consortium is going to give a copy of this report to all the question setters, and they have to take on board the suggestions and recommendations which have actually been made here. Okay, now before we wrap up our session for today, there is one final aspect I want to deal with, and this aspect deals with CLAT 2028 aspirants and aspirants who are aspiring for the common law admission test beyond that. So this last part of the video is specifically focused on CLAT aspirants who will give the exam in 2027 or after that. Okay, so these are actually the suggestions for the reform of the CLAT paper made by the expert committee. Okay, this is a big significant overhaul. Okay, and what the committee suggests is reducing the current 5 sections to 3 sections in total. Okay, so the biggest change that the expert committee has proposed is the elimination, the complete elimination of the GK and current affairs section of the exam. Okay, what are the 3 sections the committee recommends should be there for future CLAT exams 2027 onwards? Number 1, logical reasoning and legal aptitude all merged into one section. Second, language and comprehension. So the English portion will remain. The committee does not make any point about whether the exam should be conducted in other languages, because the committee says that this matter is currently sub judice. So the English section, the logic and legal aptitude section, and third, the quantitative techniques section. So the expert committee has recommended that the CLAT paper be reduced from 5 sections to 3, that GK and current affairs be entirely eliminated, and finally, that the legal and the logic sections be merged together. All right. So these are the biggest takeaways for future CLAT aspirants who are going to give the exam in 2027, that is CLAT 2028 or after that. Now we'll do a separate video on what are the kinds of questions that are suggested. There are many sample questions as well which the expert committee has given. Okay, so we will take a look at all of that in further videos, but I did want to bring you the top takeaways of this big news story relating to CLAT. This was released late last night, I think post 10:30 or so, and of course it is significant for all aspirants whether they want to give the exam this year or next year. Finally, there is one more aspect I want to mention. For future CLAT aspirants, 2027 onwards, meaning CLAT 2028 onwards. The expert committee has also suggested that there be a subjective essay or answer component. Though the committee itself recognizes that there are significant logistical difficulties with this, there are also difficulties of objectivity with this, right? So the committee does suggest an essay component for the future, a subjective written answer component, but it is quite unclear if this is actually feasible, right? It's laid down a roadmap. Now, what's the way forward? Number one, for CLAT 2027 aspirants who will give the exam this year in December in 2026, for you, the biggest takeaways of the report, which can be found on the consortium's website, the biggest takeaways of the report are the criticisms made of the past papers. For the 2020 for CLAT 2027 aspirants this year, your pattern is not changing, but the criticisms which the expert committee has made will certainly inform the quality and character of your CLAT paper. For the future, for CLAT 2028 onwards, meaning those giving the exam in 2027 or beyond, the pattern has undergone a significant shift, though I do want to mention this is still a recommendation. Okay, and there is a deadline for the 31st of August to submit comments on this particular report, after which the consortium, along with the committee established by the Chief Justice of India, will take a call on the way forward. Okay, and so for 2028 aspirants, it's a little bit of a wait and watch. What we do know is that reasoning, English language, quantitative techniques, and core aptitude will always be relevant for CLAT. And so we can begin to focus on it right now. Okay, there is no need for you to wait to start your preparation just because the final outcome is not there, right? The only possible difference would be on GK and on the subjective component. But core aptitude, quant, English, legal aptitude, logical reasoning, these are sections that are here to stay in CLAT, even for those of you who will give CLAT 2028 in the year 2027. All right, so that's my quick overview of the expert committee's report and the consortium's press release last night. If you're facing any difficulties, if you have a hard time in understanding what are these changes, do feel free to reach out to us through the comments. You can reach out to us by call as well, and we would be absolutely privileged to be able to help you in your CLAT journey. So it's been lovely to talk to you all this morning, and I look forward to doing so again soon. Thank you and bye-bye.